A bottomless curse, a bottomless sea, accepting of all that there is and can be. The deep sea is an incredible body. So thinks every one of his men, on that he was certain. The fisherman's life suited them for this reason. Born and raised along the coast where their fathers sailed the sea. They knew their destiny lay out there as well. The salty breeze, freshest air there was, while looking down into the deep abyss.
Ready? Steady now. And heave!
In unison, they pulled the net, bearing their prize. They had done it for so long, they functioned like clockwork. Never a slip-up, and never a thought of any other life.
There we have it. Enough for today.
Seeing the dark clouds had begun to loom in the distance, Barent called out to his crew of 8 other fishermen, and they started tending to the fish while he took the rudder, setting course back home. A slight chill in the bone had come about in the morn, which made him be vigilant for the thick grey sky to come, for he knew it would. But for now the sea was still, and the wind had only picked up slightly and pleasantly. The gulls sang as they toured around their sails, a fine tune for any fisherman. They dock at their little harbour, fit only for 3 boats. One of the men's wives stood on the bridge and eagerly waved to her husband on their approach. The man was first to jump off to tie the vessel, then straight into her arms. He looked up at the Barent with apologetic eyes. What was there a young man could do? Before his own children had come, he had loved his woman just the same. Then the love changed. He nodded, and the pair hurried away along the bridge.
There are fish need gotten.
A less love-smitten crew member shouted after them.
Leave 'em be, Mace. We can gut the fish just fine on our own.
Mace showed no further interest in pursuing the debate. He too knew how it could be. Before Barent was able to disembark, a glint in the corner of his eye got his attention. He gazed along the cliffside beach and spotted its source. A fisherman never mistook a fish for anything else, and what was laying still on the sands while the small waves moved up and down beside it was definitely a fish.
Well, I'll be.
Their little hamlet was locally famous for their proficiency as whalers, few as they were.
Hey, you two, look yonder. Must be a washed-up whale.
2 men beside him, leaning over the side, previously looking out over the dock, turned and squinted up at him, then towards his pointed finger, holding their hands to their forehead to ward off the sun.
Yep, must be a young one. Pity. Be that as it may, we ought to shake it up.
He disembarked and walked along the bridge, followed by the other 2.
Are you leaving too? What of it? Be right back. Just check out a wash-up.
The rim of the sandy beach was just narrow enough for one to walk on. On the left did cliffs abruptly rise, and on the other laid the mighty sea. Suddenly, a queer feeling sprung up in him. It came so sudden he stopped dead in his tracks involuntarily. What? It did not linger, and without response, he continued on his way. Then it would come about once more, in greater force. Its nature felt alien, nothing he ever felt, and it emerged from thin air. Was the storm that ferocious that he could feel it like this? The defining quality was that something was wrong, as much did he perceive. Wrong in such a fashion it could make him cry, just like if someone would have told him a loved one had passed. Mourning felt appropriate. It overwhelmed him, and it felt inside his chest as a big clump. Then behind him, one burst out in wallowing tears. Barent hastily turned around to see the burly man cry like a babe. I don't know. It's nothing. It took him a moment to get the words out, and they were scarcely comprehensible. But he eventually pulled himself together, putting a lid on his sudden emotions. The last stretch was uneventful, but the feeling did persist. It was no fish nor whale laying dead on the beach, but the things of fairy tales, and it made him freeze. They had heard and favored the tales of mermaids of the sea, or it was at least what came to mind, and as it often is, reality can be disappointing. Its body was of a humongous eel. Translucent fins ran along its body towards its tail end. The upper body, however, started to look familiar. Shoulders emerged that were the foundations to skinny, aquatic arms. The hands were delicate, precisely those of humans. On the shoulders started an eel-like neck that ended in a slit where slender tentacles emerged. They could only stand and stare with the sorrow overwhelming. Tiny, luminescent little things crawled like insects here and there over the body. They appeared so tiny and pleasant, curious little beings that seemed not to move as other insects like ants or spiders. He grew closer, and without protest from his companion, the raw emotions within began to manifest itself into sounds. A whispered cacophony of voices in a language of foreign nature, if even a language at all. It was like a message that they wanted him to hear, for he was convinced it came from the divine little lights. He stretched out a calm and quivering hand towards them, and they started to dance towards his fingertips. Kos is here. The grief was hers, and now it was also his. A tremendous compassion overwhelmed him, and he started to cry for this loss. He could hear sounds, many different tones that lay over each other, harmonizing in a grand voice. It spoke no words. It spoke in feelings and impressions. Things words are insufficient for. Then his sight was clouded by an enveloping ocean. He was alone in a dark blue and green void. The deep sea that is home to everything that can be. It was here he understood it all. Kos. Then another one emerges into the void. It was his friend. He was crying too.
Lake. A carrill rune that transcribes inhuman sounds. This transcription of the Great One's inhuman voices ripples like a watery reflection. This rune means lake, and those who memorize it enjoy reduced physical damage. Great volumes of water serve as a bulwark guarding sleep, and an augur of the eldritch truth. Overcome this hindrance and seek what is yours.